maps and satellites, one of the greatest mysteries in the world was the source of the Nile River. The Nile is the longest river in Africa and one of the longest rivers on earth. It flows through several countries before reaching Egypt and emptying into the Mediterranean Sea. Ancient Egyptians depended on this yearly flood to grow crops, making the river the foundation of one of history's greatest civilizations. Yet, for thousands of years, no one knew exactly where the river began. Greek and Roman scholars debated the mystery. Some believe the river started in distant mountain covered with snow, while others imagine enormous underground lakes feeding it. The famous Greek philosopher Ptolemy suggested that the Nile originated from the mountains of the moon, a mysterious mountain range somewhere in Central Africa. His theory remained popular for over 1,000 years because no one had explored the regions closely enough to prove or disprove it. The search for the Nile source became one of the greatest geographical challenges of the 19th century. European explorers, driven by curiosity and competition, organized dangerous expeditions into Central Africa. Among the most famous were Richard Francis Burton and John Henning Speke. The two men were talented explorers but had very different personalities. Burton was an experienced linguist and adventurer, while Speke was determined, confident, and sometimes stubborn. Their journey was filled with hardship. They faced tropical disease, difficult weather, dangerous wildlife, and unfamiliar terrain. Food often became scarce, and many members of their expedition became ill. Burton suffered severe sickness, while Speke temporarily lost much of his hearing because of an infection. Despite these challenges, they continued exploring lakes and rivers that had never been mapped by Europeans. In 1858, Speke reached the source of massive lake that he named Lake Victoria after Queen Victoria of Britain. He became convinced that his enormous lake was the main source of the Nile. Burton disagreed because he had not seen enough evidence. The disagreement grew into one of the most famous scientific disputes of the era. Newspaper scholars and the public followed their argument with great interest. A few years later, another explorer, Henry Morton Stanley, traveled around Lake Victoria and confirmed that water flowed out of the lake into the White Nile. This supported Speke's claim, although scientists later discovered that the complete story was even more complicated. Today, we know that the Nile has several important tributaries. The White Nile began from river connected to Lake Victoria, while the Blue Nile started in Ethiopia at Lake Tana. Together, they joined to form the mighty Nile that flows through Sudan and Egypt. The search for the Nile source teaches us that exploration is rarely simple. Great discoveries often require patience, teamwork, and years of investigation. It also reminds us that science is a process of questioning, testing, and improving ideas rather than accepting the first explanation. Even in an age when much of the world has been mapped, the determination shown by these explorers continues to inspire people who seek answers to difficult questions. Whether exploring distant land, studying the oceans, or investigating space, human curiosity remains one of our greatest strengths, pushing us to discover what still lies beyond the horizon.